This is Combat Mania on the Undetermined Podcast Network.
You are listening to Combat Mania, Cheap Seat Sports Production, part of the Undetermined Podcast Network. It's episode number 8. I'm Tom Albano, and man, November has been a crazy month. Apologies for not getting an episode in until now, but you know what? Here we are, and November has been a crazy month, not just in my life, but in the world of combat sports. We've had crazy events going on in MMA. We've just had I would say, successful, maybe more a mixed review to successful WWE event in Survivor Series. We've had releases, we've had a 30 for 30, and we've got a whole situation going on in boxing's heavyweight division. Unification is the theme. So, we got some stuff to talk about, so let's just jump right into it, and let's start with the world of mixed martial arts. So, a couple of weeks ago, we had what can probably be best described as one of the most monumental nights in UFC history. UFC 217 took place a couple of weeks ago on November the 4th. That was a Saturday night at Madison Square Garden, New York City, and it was a fun night. It was an enjoyable night, an enjoyable event to watch, and, well, we got 3 new champions coming out of it. It is the first time in UFC history that there were 3 title fights, and all 3 champions going into the event lost their titles. This was only the 4th time in UFC history where 3 title matches actually took place. The first time it ever happened was at UFC 33 back in, I want to say that was 2001, and is always often described by President Dana White as one of the worst shows in the UFC's history. And then, of course, you had the second time it happened was UFC 205, which was last year's Madison Square Garden card, the first ever event the UFC ever held at Madison Square Garden. And then the third time was this past summer with UFC 214 back at end of July. So now UFC 217, and we saw 3 new champions. First of all, of course, GSP with the successful comeback. I have to admit, I severely doubted George St-Pierre going into this fight. I thought he was done. I thought, I had doubts. I'm like, I know GSP is one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. I know GSP has, so much. He has done so much. He has a resume that speaks for itself. But it had been 4 years, almost exactly 4 years, 50 pay-per-view events for UFC exactly, since GSP had stepped foot inside the UFC octagon. So it was like, what's he going to be like? And, well, safe to say, he and Michael Bisping actually produced a hell of a battle. Probably one of the best fights of the night. And GSP showed he still had it. He still has it in him. And GSP ended up getting Michael Bisping in a rear naked choke. Bisping passed out, so GSP won by technical submission and won the UFC middleweight championship. He is now the 4th fighter in UFC history to have won a championship in 2 different weight divisions. Of course, the other 3 members of that club include legendary UFC fighters Randy Couture, BJ Penn, and of course the current UFC lightweight champion Conor McGregor. We will get to Conor McGregor because Conor McGregor has been producing some headlines of his own since late October and early to mid-November. We'll get to that. But yeah, Bisping showed a hell of a lot of respect for GSP. I mean, not into the lead up of the fight. He was very disrespectful, but after the fight, not very disrespectful, but it was like, the hype. I guess some people can call it disrespect, but after the fight, he said GSP is a hell of a competitor and such. It's one of those things where it's like you hype the fight and then you leave it all in the octagon, and then afterwards it's like, okay, this guy is a hell of a guy. I like him. But yeah, George St-Pierre, I mean, he put on a nice display. He really, really showed that he still had it. Because one of my things was, I understood that, I was like, okay, I understand that, you were still training, that you were training your ass off for the fight, that you had trained almost every day since you had been gone. But I had said, I think on the last episode, that stepping into the octagon and practicing are two completely different things. Because it's like, okay, yeah, you can do it real well when you're shadowboxing, when you're practice sparring and stuff like that. But it's different when you're actually competing in the match. But Bisping and GSP both landed, some shots early on. That's the thing. It was when GSP got the takedown on Bisping, it's like, oh, George St-Pierre is back. Even though Bisping actually was a big counter striker during the fight. Then GSP got another takedown in the second, but Bisping actually got back up, and he was making St-Pierre eat a number of shots towards the end of the second round. It's like, maybe it was at that point was like the only time I was like, oh, shit. GSP is actually getting his, not getting his ass handed to him, but he was eating punches. He was eating a number of shots. And then it was weird because in the third round where the fight ended, it was like you had GSP. He got the takedown. And yet it was like Michael Bisping, he was on the bottom. But he was doing more of the damage, it seemed, than GSP in the top. Like GSP could have done, ground and pound, but he didn't really do any of that. So Bisping was landing shot after shot. He was throwing punches up at GSP, and GSP actually was pretty damn bloodied up. But then the two actually ended up standing again, and then GSP knocked Bisping down, ended up locking in the rear naked choke. Michael Bisping passed out. GSP is the new middleweight champion. So everyone thinks, okay, what's next in the future for these guys? So, here's what's next. First of all, Michael Bisping is probably one of the craziest sons of bitches on this planet. Michael Bisping, like I said, had just fought. He's going to be fighting again this weekend at the UFC's event in Shanghai, taking on Kelvin Gastelum. For those of you unaware, the UFC is actually heading over to Shanghai, China for an event this weekend that's going to be broadcasted exclusively on UFC Fight Pass. And it was supposed to be Anderson Silva versus Kelvin Gastelum, but Anderson Silva was popped yet again. He was flagged by USADA for an anti-doping violation. So it's probably going to be another year at least, if not longer, that we'll see Anderson Silva back in the octagon. Will we see Anderson Silva back in the octagon? I mean, this is the second time he's been caught ever since coming back from the leg injury that kept him out for all of 2014. So, with that in mind, Michael Bisping, like I said, is crazy. And he is back again after losing his title, taking Silva's place against Kelvin Gastelum. So, I mean, hey, there's crazy sons of bitches who have done it before in MMA. Donald Cerrone recently was known for doing this, taking fights on last minute and stepping in, even if he had already fought like weeks ago. But here we are. So Bisping, this is actually going to be his. This is what they say. They say that this will probably be his second to last fight in his career. He has stated that he is looking to headline a UFC event that's scheduled for London. Well, scheduled to take place in London, and I think it's in March. At least tentatively scheduled for March. It would be a fight night event. I don't know if it would be a Fox Sports 1 event. I'm going to assume so. But it seems like Bisping's requests, or his dream retirement, his dream final match would be in London, headlining that UFC Fight Night London event, and taking on, I don't think he would set a specific opponent, but that he would headline that show, essentially. Meanwhile, GSP, people were talking about, would GSP retire after the fight? They had said that if GSP lost this fight, he would retire. GSP stated that from his own mouth. They were talking about if Bisping had lost, would he retire? Obviously, that's not the case. Or at least Bisping is going to be winding down his career, but he won't full out retire just yet. But for GSP, they did mention during the lead up to the event, during a couple of the press conferences leading up to the event, that it was written in the contract for Bisping GSP that the winner of this fight would have to face Robert Whittaker. For those of you who don't know, or those of you who may have forgotten, Robert Whittaker defeated Yoel Romero back at UFC 213 in early July, and because of that, Robert Whittaker is the interim middleweight champion. So since that was an interim title fight, and the world title fight just happened, the interim champion, Whittaker, and the world champion, GSP, must now fight in a unification bout. It was written in that contract, and the latest news I have on that is right here. Apparently, the UFC added an event in Perth, Australia. I think it seems to be in February, and the UFC brass is hoping that a GSP Whittaker fight can happen at that UFC event. I guess it would have to be a pay-per-view then, but St-Pierre, he just fought. How long does he need to rest and take time off for? There's a lot of stuff that's got to go into that, so we don't know if that's going to be the dream case. Or maybe they do another interim title fight. I don't know. But something's going to happen. We'll have to wait and find out. But as I said, that wasn't the only title to change hands at UFC 217. TJ Dillashaw is once again the king of the UFC bantamweights, winning the UFC Bantamweight Championship at UFC 217, defeating Cody Garbrandt. And the fight between Dillashaw and Garbrandt, I knew was going to be, there was something was going to happen, because these two guys were once teammates and now they were bitter rivals. So it's like, there's got to be so much going on here. There was a lot of feeling out in the first couple of minutes, but then Garbrandt got in his shots. Garbrandt actually was in control for a lot of the first round and beating up Dillashaw quite a bit. And actually, Dillashaw could have been finished off late in the first round, but horn sounded, that was the end of the round, and then Dillashaw came out for the second round and it looked like, he's still stunned, he might be done. and then suddenly he throws a right hook and TJ Dillashaw wins the title. So you could argue Garbrandt was in control for most of the fight. Maybe it was just a fluke and Dillashaw got off the lucky shot. But, man, that's just how MMA is. One punch, one strike could change the fight in an instant. And TJ Dillashaw versus Cody Garbrandt for the Bantamweight Championship at UFC 217 pretty much is a fight that is probably the most exemplary of that kind of thought about mixed martial arts, that kind of, truth that anything can happen, and all it takes is one shot, 1 second, and the fight can change in an instant. Which, again, is more of my case where, we shouldn't have 10-9 scoring systems. And the third title fight that happened, it wasn't the main event or co-main event, it was right before those two, but it was historical nonetheless. Rose Namajunas, Thug Rose. Rose Namajunas is the new UFC Women's Strawweight Champion, ending the undefeated streak of Joanna Violence. It seemed fairly, even going in. But then Namajunas landed a punch on the button. But Namajunas, she did the ground and pound. Joanna Violence originally survived. But then Thug Rose got her again into ground and pound and continued until Big John McCarthy stopped the fight. So it was weird. And what's funny, I mentioned this on Twitter, and I actually got some attention. Not a whole lot of attention, but a couple of people were like, ooh, that's true, and I ended up being right, so I pat myself a little bit on the back. It seemed going into this fight that Joanna was mad. Like, really aggressive kind of mad. Kind of like Ronda Rousey when she went in to fight Holly Holm. Because I noted during the entrance when Joanna was going in, it was like she was like had like this intense look on her face. Meanwhile, Rose was calm and everything. I said the last time I saw anything like this was UFC 193 when Holly Holm was calm when she was challenging Ronda Rousey, and Rousey was this aggressive, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna run through you kind of attitude. And then, of course, as we all know, history, Ronda Rousey got her ass kicked in that fight, and other than a 46-second embarrassment loss to Amanda Nunes, we haven't seen Ronda Rousey in an octagon. And, of course, Rose ended up winning the women's strawweight title. And not that we're not going to see Joanna Violence again in the octagon. I think far from that. But it's like, wow, that kind of sucks for Joanna and her fans. Joanna was actually crying backstage. There was footage of everything. And Joanna said, I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm going to come back for that belt. If you want my personal opinion, I think she doesn't even need to go after that belt. I mean, if she wanted to step up and wait and challenge Amanda Nunes, that would be amazing. That would be one hell of a fight. Or, the UFC is actually starting the women's flyweight division. Actually, it has started, but they're going to crown the first champion next week, I think, at the finale of The Ultimate Fighter. So, maybe you can step up to that weight class. She doesn't need to get the women's strawweight title back. She can become the first UFC female fighter to win titles in 2 different weight classes, as in the men, Couture, Penn, McGregor, and now St-Pierre have done. She has the ability to be one of the best. She is already one of the best female fighters in UFC history, but she has the ability to do more. She has the ability to do that, to win 2 weight divisions titles. I think it's possible. Elsewhere on the card, Stephen Thompson and Jorge Masvidal. I mean, it was a fine fight, but Stephen Thompson ended up sweeping the scorecards. Johnny Hendricks got TKO'd by Paulo Costa, and I mean, this is what it was like 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 now that Hendricks has lost. I think it's time for Hendricks to call a career. That or he's going to end up getting cut soon. And then, bye, Johnny. See you in Bellator. Walt Harris, I commended Walt Harris so much going into this fight because I'm like, he stepped up at UFC 216 in a last-minute situation, took on a fight against Fabricio Werdum, which he basically had no chance of winning, but went through it anyways. He got tapped out in a little more over a minute, but still, credit is where it's due. And Walt Harris ended up fighting Marc Goddard at this event. And then Walt Harris ends up getting himself disqualified in the first round. Late in the first round, but basically what happened was Goddard got hit below the belt. The referee was calling time, and supposedly Harris didn't hear it, even though, to me, I said he was right. The referee was practically next to you, and he was yelling, time, 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 time! But Walt Harris went through with it anyways. Like, he still continued to go at it and ended up kicking Goddard in the head, and Goddard couldn't continue. So he actually had a disqualification. A disqualification. I have rarely ever seen that. MMA disqualifications are very rare. John Jones has been disqualified for the 12-6 elbow thing. But basically, I'm sorry, Walt Harris. I understand that you could be, like, his excuse was, I didn't hear him because I was too focused in. You can be focused in, there's no doubt, I understand, but the referee is right there. When it's time to call time, time is called. And, I don't know, it was just stupid. Stupid is as stupid does. I'm sorry, Walt, that was stupid of you. Ovid St. Preux's knockout of Corey Anderson was good. Mickey Gall lost to Randy Brown. Mickey Gall's a young fighter, though, so he can bounce back from this. It's his first professional loss. Curtis Blades, they actually went to replay for this. New York State Athletic Commission has instituted replay after the controversial fight back in the spring between, I think it was Chris Weidman and Gegard Mousasi. And basically now, the UFC, if a fight is ended or time is called, they can actually go to the footage. So, Curtis Blades and Alexei Olenek, they were fighting. Olenek got hits, and the referee called time, thinking perhaps it was a, low blow. And it looked like they were going to go to, they're going to declare it a no contest. But they actually looked at the footage, and they went to the footage. They wanted to see, I think Blades was saying legal shot or something, and Wellnick was saying illegal shot, so they went to the footage. So once you go to the footage, the fight has to be called. It doesn't matter if the referee is right or wrong, the fight has to be called. So they looked at the footage. Turned out the referee was wrong, and it was actually a legal shot. And Curtis Blades was declared the winner by TKO, Dr. Stoppage. And then Ricardo Ramos had a knockout of his own in the opening preliminary bout. Nice. I think it was a spinning elbow or spinning back fist. It was nice, though. It was good. And UFC actually, instead of doing a fight of the night, gave out 5 Performance of the Night awards. 2 at $25,000, 3 at $50,000. The 3 $50,000 ones went to the main card fighters, and it went to the 3 new champions, St-Pierre, Dillashaw, and Namajunas. And the 2 $25,000 Performance of the Night bonuses went to OSP and Ricardo Ramos. The UFC 217 overall, fun event. Very fun event. So let's see what we got coming up. We've got... we just had 2 fight night events, Poirier Pettis and Werdum Tybura. We got this coming up this weekend, the UFC Fight Night event in China. We have the Ultimate Fighter finale to determine the first women's flyweight champion on December 1st. And then the next day in Detroit, it's UFC 218. Max Holloway defending the featherweight championship against the former champion, the man he took the belt from, Jose Aldo. It was originally going to be Frankie Edgar, but Edgar had to pull out last week or 2 weeks ago due to injury. We got a Fight Night event headlined by Swanson and Ortega on December 9th. Lawler and Dos Anjos will be fighting on December 16th on a UFC on Fox. The winner of that fight is going to be the number one contender to the UFC Welterweight Championship, currently held by Tyron Woodley. And then we got UFC 219 on December 30th. And it appears the main event for that fight is going... the main event for that card is going to be Chris Cyborg defending the Women's Featherweight Championship against Holly Holm. That sounds like a fun fight, though it took a long time for us to get a title fight for this event. So, what exactly happened? Well, let's look at the UFC champions as of now. Let's see, the current list of UFC champions. Let's try to go through from the the lowest division to the highest division. Let's see. So, the current champions. So, for the women, we've got Rose Namajunas. She just fought. So, obviously, unless she's going to do something crazy, she's not going to defend. Amanda Nunes, she fought in July, so maybe. But the UFC hasn't done 2 women's title fights yet, so on the same card, as far as my knowledge goes. So that's probably not going to happen, because now Chris Cyborg is going to defend against Holly Holm. So, over to the men, Demetrius Johnson, he just defended back in October at 216. And TJ Dillashaw has basically called him out, saying, I want to steal his belts and I want to hold, both titles. Which is actually plausible because, honestly, there's just no competition right now for Demetrius Johnson, in my honest opinion. There's some guys, where it's like, oh, we could do a rematch of sorts, but it's like, honestly, I don't know. I really don't know. So, Johnson would be out then. Dillashaw just fought. He's gone. Max Holloway is scheduled to fight, so he's off the table. GSP just fought. He's off the table. Robert Whittaker, they don't know what's going on because they're trying to book GSP versus Whittaker for some time. So, he gone. Daniel Cormier, they are trying to do something with UFC 220, the first pay-per-view event of 2018. I think it's like January 20th or something like that. It was originally seemed like it was going to be... The rumors were swirling that it would be Volkan Oezdemir fighting him. But Oezdemir was just arrested in Florida, I think, this past week. So, that might cause some trouble. Let's see the recent report on it. Volkan Oezdemir was arrested on assault charges from a bar fight in August. So, we don't know what the heck's going to happen with that fight. It could stay on, and maybe Cormier will defend against either Alexander Gustafsson or Alvin St. Preux. But we don't know right now. So that title is up in the air, so he's out. Tyron Woodley. Now, there's been big rumors going around that Tyron Woodley, he's been calling out Nate Diaz. There's been rumors about this fight, but we don't know if that's going to happen. So, it's 1 month till UFC 219, so if he wants to do that fight, he and Nate have to come to an agreement quick. Otherwise, that's not going to happen, and he'll probably just defend against the winner of Dos Anjos and Lawler, so he's out. Stipe Miocic, for a long time now, since I think the summer, he's been in a contract dispute with the UFC. So, unless maybe they're going to do an interim heavyweight champion, I doubt that, though. Because reports are coming in that Stipe Miocic and the UFC are close to an agreement that they will, he will come back and he will fight. I believe the disagreement was over money because Stipe, in his 2 title defenses, has earned less than his challengers. And the 2 guys he has defended successfully against are Alistair Overeem and Junior Dos Santos. I guess kind of a fair argument because he's about to go for his third straight title defense. No heavyweight has ever defended the title 3 straight times, so a lot of history writing on that bout, his next bout, so he's out. And then we come to Conor McGregor. And well, Conor McGregor has been making headlines of his own. For those of you who don't know, Conor McGregor has been in a feud of sorts for the last month with not UFC President Dana White, not one of the boxing personalities, even though some boxing personalities and MMA personalities for that matter have called him out, but with a mixed martial arts referee. A referee. I wish I was joking. So let's talk about this timeline of events that has gone on between Conor McGregor and Marc Goddard. So let's do this little timeline of sorts. So the first instance happens back in an event in October. It was a UFC event in Poland. One of Conor McGregor's teammates who he trains with, Artem Lobov, was fighting Andre Fili. And McGregor essentially was acting like an unofficial cornerman. He came into an area outside the cage where like all the cornermen are. And McGregor's not a licensed cornerman, so he really shouldn't be there. During the match, Goddard does something, something that you never see really a referee do. He stopped the match and said, McGregor, you have to go back to your seat. And then that was the same event where Conor McGregor got caught. Artem Lobov ended up losing the fight to Andre Fili. And during the walk backstage, McGregor was trying to, cheer Lobov up or, give him some better spirits. And during that time, he ended up getting caught on camera using... And it's not like, when I say caught on camera, it wasn't like an interview or anything. It was like camera footage or fan camera footage. It was like, it seemed to be both. But it wasn't anything like an official interview or a microphone in their face. It was just, he happened to be on camera when it happened. Rather, a camera happened to be on him when it happened. He ended up saying the phrase, I think it was faggot. And by the terms of the conversation, from what people could take out from it, it seemed like he was calling Fili a faggot. He was caught on camera, and, well, he had to be forced to apologize. And I know some people might come out now and are like, oh, that means McGregor hates gays. McGregor hates, anybody who is LGBTQT. Well, not exactly true. Because Conor McGregor and his team have actually, over in Ireland, were big supporters of trying to get gay rights, official there. Which I think they aren't official there now. So, it's just, it was just a sad thing to see, someone slip on, pretty much act immature. But then, and you'd think maybe that was going to be a big thing because, he said it, and it's just, he's the face of UFC, it's shameful. And they made Fabricio Werdum do community outreach when he used a homophobic slur. So it's like, all the eyes were locked on the UFC because, would that be hypocritical? But then, Conor McGregor, that's not all, because that ends up him calling Fili a faggot, supposedly. That ends up not being the big story, because weeks later, Bellator is at a show in Ireland. They're holding an event in Ireland. It's on November 10th. And another one of McGregor's teammates, Charlie Ward, is fighting at the event against John Redman. Ward knocks Redman out with 1 second left in the first round. And McGregor jumped into the cage, celebrating with his teammates, and it's like, oh, what a scene. And McGregor, Ireland loves McGregor. So Conor McGregor's, hugging Ward on the ground, congratulating him. Now, the problem is, once again, he's not an official cornerman, and he jumped into the cage, which normally wouldn't be a problem. But what was going on was referee Marc Goddard. Yes, Marc Goddard was the referee for that fight too. Marc Goddard basically, I'm going to try to explain as best as I can. So, once the referee has made a call, in the ring, he has to then go over to the judges and explain the decision, and to the ring announcer to explain the decision. But before he could do any of that, McGregor basically jumped the gun. Goddard then attempted, it was like, McGregor, you gotta leave. And then McGregor got into Goddard's face, touched his chest, and shouted back at him. It was ugly. It was pretty ugly. And there has been, and since he touched the referee, that had, they were like, oh my god, there could be huge implications here, because UFC President Dana White has actually fired somebody for, touching a referee after the fight, putting their hands on the referee for disagreeing with something they did. And basically it was like, if you put your hands on an official, you're gone. Even though he has hired somebody who allegedly has put their hands on a referee before, actually maybe knocked out a referee during a fight. But now, because this has been an ongoing thing with Goddard, and Goddard's like, just because he is the face of the UFC and the face of MMA, I'm not going to let Conor McGregor bully be around. So, it was just, so what would happen? I don't know, because the commission, basically, this athletic commission in Ireland was like, this is disgraceful, something has to happen. The problem is, that commission can't do anything. Because Conor McGregor is not a contracted Bellator fighter. The only way he can be punished is by, the commissions where he has fought in. And over the last year, he has only fought in Nevada and New York. New York, of course, for UFC 205, and Nevada for the big super fight with Floyd Mayweather. So, basically, it's up to them, although a rumor is starting to spread now that an undisputed title fight with interim champion Tony Ferguson was supposed to happen at 219. Supposedly, however, that's not going to happen now. The big rumor is that after this incident, the UFC decided to pull the fight. McGregor and his team deny that, and their evidence is that it was just rumor mill talk, which is true. It is all rumor mill talk. There was nothing official reporting going on of, McGregor and Ferguson were going to fight. It was just, likely. To us MMA journalists, it was likely that it would happen. To us MMA community and fans, it was likely to happen because end of the year card, they want something big. Conor hasn't fought in a long time. He needs to defend the title, so there you go. It made the most sense, in other words. So, what now? I guess Cyborg Holmes just going to be the only title fight that night, I guess. It's weird. So, a lot going on in MMA, but let's check out the world of WWE now. So, the WWE recently put on its annual Survivor Series event this past Sunday night. Survivor Series this year took place from the Toyota Center in Houston. And this is actually a pretty fun weekend because, they do SmackDown. They do NXT TakeOver the night before the pay-per-view. Then they do the pay-per-view on Sunday. And then Monday, Tuesday, they do Raw and SmackDown. I caught some of Raw yesterday, as you saw a couple of tweets on me at Combat Mania from it. I didn't get a chance to watch SmackDown. Recording this a few hours after SmackDown's gone off the air. I didn't get a chance to watch it because I was traveling home. So I don't know what's happened on that show. I know supposedly a lumberjack match happened between New Day and Owens and Zayn. I didn't get a chance to see that, so I can't comment on that right now. So I'm just going to talk about Survivor Series itself. But let me first talk about NXT War Games, because it was fun. Lars Sullivan fought Cassius Ohno. This is my first time seeing Lars Sullivan, and the dude looks like a freaking beast, let me tell you. He beat Cassius Ohno in like 5 minutes, and it's like, either Cassius Ohno, is going to be stuck in NXT forever, or they are really high on Lars Sullivan. And I think it's the latter. I think, and I'm not surprised, Lars Sullivan, holy crap. Now the question is going to be, if he gets called up to the main roster, will he, he's got to stand out. He just cannot be a giant character. There's got to be something to him. He's got to have some content to him. He's got to have some special content, and then some substance. Substance is the word. No fluff. Substance, as one of my professors says. You don't want to be somebody who's just made of fluff. You got to have something deep inside. You got to have some substance, some content inside of you. Draw people's attention and do your job right. So then we moved on to Aleister Black versus the Velveteen Dream, and that was a fun match. This match is one of the reasons why I say Patrick Clark should have won Tough Enough. Although, I don't know, because it's like, as much as Patrick Clark, should have won Tough Enough, I'll get to it later, because I do have something I want to mention after the Survivor Series talk. So, Aleister Black, hell of a performance. Maybe, I've got a feeling Aleister Black's going to get called up to the main roster, the next round of call-ups, once WrestleMania 34 is done in April. He'll be in that call-up class. Ember Moon won the NXT Women's Championship. Congratulations to her. I thought it was a hell of a performance. She's a hell of a worker. She's worked her ass off. The feud she had with Asuka this year was great. Well deserved. And then Andrade Almas wins the NXT title from Drew McIntyre. WTF. I actually ran a poll, and people thought, I wasn't alone in this. This was a bigger upset than Jinder Mahal winning the WWE title. Just holy crap. I want to see where they go with this, because I'm like, what are they doing? I don't get it. This guy who was just jobbing out for like the past year is now suddenly the NXT champion. It's kind of like a Jinder Mahal situation. So I don't know what they go from here. Although Drew McIntyre did land really bad on that final move of the match, so I saw some people like torn pec or torn rotator cuff. I think it was a torn pec, and it's like, imagine if McIntyre actually does go down with injury as a result of this. That's going to be kill. But the War Games match between the Undisputed Era, Authors of Pain, and Roderick Strong and Sanity, that was great. That was phenomenal. I enjoyed it. I know some people didn't enjoy it, but it's like, wow, you guys are killjoys. It was a fun match. It's definitely different from, the WCW style War Games, but WWE always wants to put its spin on anything, especially if it originated in WCW. But I enjoyed the match. But now let's get into the Survivor Series itself. Pre-show, I didn't really get a chance to watch the pre-show because I was working on something that night. Elias defeated Matt Hardy. Enzo retained the Cruiserweight Championship by beating Kalisto. And then Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn beat Breezango. And it's like, wow, Owens and Zayn on the pre-show and fighting Breezango. It's like, I guess it's like, oh, we don't have anything for these guys to do, so here you go. Although some say it might be punishment because Owens and Zayn supposedly went into business for themselves, quote unquote, during a it was during a match on TV against the New Day. And like supposedly something was supposed to happen, and Owens and Zayn decide not to go through with it or went in another direction. I'm trying to word it, and I can't really word it right. But Owens and Zayn, but it wasn't a burial, as we'll see later on. The Shield opened the show against the New Day. Fun match. Nothing too special. Nothing too special from the opening match, but still enjoyable, still fine. Also, the second longest match of the night. There was only one match that went less than 15 minutes, I think. They put in a lot of time for each of these matches. The only one they didn't do, the only one that they gave only a little less than 10 minutes to, other than the pre-show matches, was the Baron Corbin-Miz match. But Shield ended up getting the win. So they actually were keeping score, too, of the matches. They had graphics and stuff similar to like the UFC when they do the tail of the tape and such. So Raw goes up 1-0. Then Team Raw goes up 2-0 in a Survivor Series Interbrand elimination match. It was the women's match, so Becky Lynch gets eliminated first, then Bayley, then Nia Jax, then Alicia Fox. And when Alicia, she got rolled up by Naomi, but it was weird. It's like I didn't even realize that it had been a roll-up. It was like, I was watching the pay-per-view on the network, and then I was but I was interacting with a big fan base of a group known as New Legacy Inc., who were doing their own sort of Discord on it. You guys should really check out New Legacy Inc., by the way. They're so much fun, so entertaining. So then it's down to just Sasha Banks and Asuka for the Raw team. They eliminate Naomi and Carmella, but Sasha Banks ends up getting eliminated, forced to tap to the sharpshooter. But fortunately for Team Raw, Asuka knocks off Tamina and Natalya. So Asuka wins, and well, once again, nobody is ready for Asuka. And Raw is up 2-0. And then, probably the biggest upset of the night, Baron Corbin defeats The Miz to get SmackDown on the board. And it's like, wow, Baron Corbin, I thought maybe Miz would win because he's been around longer time. He's the Intercontinental Champion. The IC title is, big prestige value. And wow, they actually gave Corbin the win. So, good job on Corbin's part. Plus, Corbin wasn't in some of WWE's best graces because of certain backstage things going on. He ended up losing his Money in the Bank cash-in, if you remember, from this past summer. But I guess he's back in some good graces. He's the United States Champion. He just got a big victory on pay-per-view over The Miz. It's going to hopefully help the United States Championship out. And also, as we learned last night, The Miz is, or 2 nights ago on Raw, The Miz is no longer the Intercontinental Champion, as The Miz lost the title in the main event of Raw to Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is now the second member of the Shield to get the WWE Grand Slam. And then, after the show, they posted it on YouTube. Him and the Shield gave the triple powerbomb to The Miz. Miz supposedly, I don't really like reporting on dirt sheet information on this show, but supposedly The Miz is going to be out of action for some time. We don't know how long. Supposedly he's going to be filming the next edition of, the Marine movies. So we don't know how long he's going to be gone for, but that would do that. And then, what's going to happen next with the Intercontinental title, we don't know. So some people can complain, oh, Roman's got the Intercontinental title now. Oh, he lost to Baron Corbin. But I think it's more, in Baron Corbin's case, it's building up the title as well as building up Baron Corbin himself. And then for Roman Reigns' case, I guess maybe giving him a title for a potential WrestleMania, big WrestleMania main event match. Plus, maybe getting the Shield, to be all champions again. If Rollins and Ambrose can win back their tag team titles, so kind of like 2013, when back in 2013 Rollins and Reigns were the tag champions and Ambrose was the United States champion. Hopefully, if that was the case, they actually defend titles this time, especially the singles title. But where they go from here, I don't know. So there's that. Usos and Cesaro and Sheamus, good match. Pretty good match. Arguably match of the night. Probably not match of the night considering, we had the 5-on-5, although that was kind of mixed, but we'll get to that. Usos ended up defeating Cesaro and Sheamus to make it 2-2, and then Charlotte defeated Alexa Bliss in an okay contest to make it 3-2 SmackDown. Brock Lesnar and AJ Styles. I was concerned at first because AJ Styles did not start off the match strong. He was pretty much getting beaten down by Lesnar. It's like, oh God, I feared this would happen. I wanted a good match. But then they started, they give Styles some offense, and him and Lesnar had him off and on, pretty good encounter. Like, he got some offense in, and Lesnar, and then Styles. So it was fine. People who hate Lesnar could complain, and people could complain about the WWE titles image being ruined, and it's like, I can understand that, because I think it could have been worse, though, if the match had gone, the way it started, with Lesnar just destroying Styles. I'm like, oh God. Because if Styles now loses the title back to Jinder Mahal, that's just going to, in my eyes, devalue the WWE title and devalue Styles in WWE's eyes. Well, not in WWE's eye, but to the casual fan, the casual WWE fan's eyes, it's like, oh God, there goes Styles. Like, he has no value. Because I don't think Jinder Mahal has done a good job of, rather WWE has done a good job of making Jinder Mahal a serious threat. Or at least a entertaining serious threat. Meanwhile, with Lesnar, they were like, oh, Lesnar's had the longest Universal title reign out of all the champions. First of all, there's only been 4 champions. Second of all, that's because Lesnar's defending the title how many times? How many times is he on Raw? So that was fucking stupid. Oh, by the way, before I get into the main event, they had a 5-man commentary team. They had every Raw and SmackDown commentator on there, with Graves in the middle, because he's on both. And I understand for the aesthetic of it and the theme of, Raw versus SmackDown, but oh my God, I couldn't do that. That's why I was listening with the boys of New Legacy, because I'm like, God, no, I'm not sitting with a 5-man commentary team. That's too much. I liked it how they did it last year, where they constantly mixed the commentary teams. It was like, you didn't know what you were going to get, but you could get something really good or really shit. It depended. Then they came to the main event, the 5-on-5 Survivor Series men's match. Team Raw versus Team SmackDown. If Team Raw lost, Kurt Angle would be fired as Raw GM, but Team Raw ended up winning. Weird kind of ending, because it's Triple H. Let's see, the final 4, I think it was, or it was 3-on-2 for Raw, in favor of Raw. For Raw, it was Kurt Angle, Triple H, and Braun Strowman, and on SmackDown, it was Randy Orton, Shane McMahon. So, Braun pins Orton. So, Orton's out. So, it's just Shane versus Kurt Angle, Braun Strowman, and Triple H. But then, Triple H pedigrees Kurt Angle. And just when you think, Triple H could have finished Shane off, he pedigrees Kurt Angle. Shane pins Kurt Angle, because Triple H dragged Shane onto Kurt. So Kurt's out of the match, and then Triple H pedigrees Shane, and then Triple H wins the match. So the theme is apparently that Triple H wanted to win the match himself. He wanted to beat both Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon, both general managers of the shows. Plus, of course, Shane, Triple H's brother-in-law, and Triple H and Kurt Angle have a huge history. But Braun didn't like that, the tease, and he grabbed Triple H by the throat and was like, if you ever do anything like that again, I'll hurt you. But then proceeded to give him 2 or 3 of the running power slams anyways. So, I was confused by the ending a bit, but I kind of like where they're going with this, especially if they're going to do, if they're actually going to lead up to a Triple H versus Kurt at Rumble, and then Triple H versus Braun at WrestleMania. It seems like, kind of in the eyes of WWE, it's like finally they're giving Braun his due. It's like, I guess they saw the fans cheering for him, and they saw, the work that he can put in with his feud with Roman over these past months. And it's like, I think WWE's finally pulling the trigger and maybe giving Braun a chance. So this is going to be big. So this is good. So I think TakeOver was the better show, but some people were saying Survivor Series was I kind of don't know. I kind of am more in the positive middle. Like, there's some things that could have been better without a shadow of a doubt, but I don't think it was as bad as people are saying, as some people are saying, rather. Just want to get into more quick things before we move on to boxing to quickly wrap up the show. Ric Flair's 30 for 30, and Charlotte just released a article in the Players Tribune around that same time as the 30 for 30 from ESPN on Ric Flair's life and his career. Both, are definitely emotional. Ric Flair, it's like a real delve into the man, a real, in-depth look into the man, his life, his upbringing, what made him get into the wrestling business, his career, his battles, personal demons, everything. It's insane. Go check it out, and then go check out Charlotte Flair's little piece in the Players Tribune. And James Ellsworth, who had been managing Carmella, and burst onto the scene last year with WWE because he was like a meme of sorts after being in a jobbers, match, was released by the company before Survivor Series. I think it was within the last week. Ellsworth came onto the scene after getting destroyed by Braun Strowman, and he had such a weird look about him that he basically became a meme in the wrestling community. The internet wrestling community. And then Ellsworth came back. He made a couple appearances on SmackDown before getting a full-time contract and was inserted into the Dean Ambrose-AJ Styles feud for the WWE title. Mixed reviews from fans, but then he ended up managing Carmella all these months. And, James Ellsworth, he's a true underdog story. What can I say? James Ellsworth has, he did a hell of a lot. He didn't win any titles. He was a manager most of the time, but, James got to live his dream. If it wasn't for us making fun of him, if it wasn't for the IWC, making fun of him and him becoming a meme, he wouldn't have gotten this 15 seconds of fame. And, honestly, he deserves it. He deserved it for all the hard work he put in. He is the true definition of what we all want to be. It's like, we can be working at something for 20 years and not get, to the level we want. But him, he was working his ass off, and he spent a long time in the indies and running his own promotions. He got to live a dream. He got to live something that few of us will ever get to experience. And he got to live it for a year. And, I was fine with James. I found him, he played his role. When he was managing Carmella, he got the heat. He got his heat. He gave her heat. He did his job, and he earned much respect, and many, fans and, people among him, his peers, liked him. So, what can be said except, James, you've done a hell of a job. I respect you so much. I admire you, and I'm so happy you got to live your dream. I'm sorry it has to end, end the way it did, but I'm so happy, you got to actually experience it. Don't be sad because it's over. Smile because it happened. And James, thank you so much. And you know what? James Ellsworth, if you're somehow listening to this and you ever want to come on this podcast, I would be forever, so happy and grateful. And, I would love it if you came onto this podcast, if you ever wanted to come on. So, invitation's out there, James. Just saying. Alright, guys, so you're listening to Combat Mania, part of the Undetermined Podcast Network. We're going to wrap things up quickly, just get into a little bit of boxing. So it seems unification is the big theme right now in the heavyweight division for boxing. Of course, I'm referring to the 3 heavyweight champions in boxing currently. You have the WBA, IBF, IBO champion Anthony Joshua. You have the WBO champion Joseph Parker, and you have the WBC champion Deontay Wilder. So, recently there have been talks about, first of all, recently Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder both retained their WBA, IBF, IBO titles in Joshua's case, and the WBC title in Wilder's case. And Joshua basically called out Wilder after successfully retaining his title And the next week after Wilder retained his title with a first-round knockout, he told Joshua, "Come on, I'm ready for you." But this past week, we've actually heard some comments from the third man, from Joseph Parker. His last title defense came back in September when he defeated Hughie Fury in what was a very unentertaining bout. Not so much on Parker's part, as more on Hughie Fury's part, but Parker hasn't really done too much on the scene. So there's a lot of talk about Joshua versus Wilder, but not enough talk about Parker's involvement in the things. He refuses to be let out of the situation. Supposedly, the rumors are going around that Parker versus Joshua could happen, but there's a big money issue. But Parker says, he wants his respect, and he actually claims he could knock Joshua out, and he could knock Wilder out. There are plans right now, if it doesn't work, that he could go with top-ranked promoter Bob Arum to fight on, I guess it would be a fight in March, in the springtime of some sort, on on that top-ranked show on ESPN. And he would defend a WBO title against somebody like Brian Jennings. Although, in my personal opinion, I don't find that to be as entertaining as a fight as, Parker versus Joshua. Would it be a test if he fought Jennings? Maybe. But Parker is still a champion. He has a title defense under his belt. And he did defeat Andy Ruiz back in December for the title. So he has some stuff to his credit. But, people didn't think that Anthony Joshua could beat Vladimir Klitschko. Look what happened. And now Anthony Joshua is the heavyweight champion of the world for, 3 out of the 5 major sanctioning bodies of boxing. So, it's possible. Parker has said that he would be willing to take 35% for the Joshua fight. It's all this money talk, man. Promoters. Recent interviews state that Parker and his promoter were requesting 60-40 split in Joshua's favor, but they claimed that Eddie Hearn, Joshua's promoter, wanted more of an 80-20 split. So he's trying to meet somewhere in the middle so the two can fight, and I hope they do, because honestly, this would be a good fight. And if they're talking unification in the heavyweight division so bad, well, just do it. Just freaking do it. And Parker's promoter, by the way, has called Joshua soft. This is the quote from David Higgins. That's the name of the promoter for WBO champion Justin Parker. He says Joshua is more hype and glamour than substance. There's a lot more hype and glamour, but we believe Joshua will fall to the unification level like England failed to reach World Cup finals. Oh! Speaking of which, I have no team in the World Cup now. The United States, the Netherlands, and Italy all failed to qualify. What the hell's the point of me watching that now? And he also went on to say that people have been asking us, why don't we make a unification fight with Wilder instead? Probably because, Wilder and Parker each only have 1 belt, so then the winner would have 2 belts and then could fight Joshua. Well, it's simple. He went on to say, for us, it's simple. Joshua is the softer of the two. So, the talk's there. So, boys, get at it. Do it. And before we go, I want to take this time to plug my personal sports blog, Cheap Seat Sports. The actual website address is cheapseatsportsite.wordpress.com. Recently, I published a piece on Teddy Atlas and his Dr. Theodore Atlas Foundation, which held its annual Teddy Dinner last week. The foundation does a variety of amazing things for youth and families in need who are unable to afford necessities we all need in life when going to school, raising a family. It has a number of programs that help teach kids about good behavior and good grades, doing well in school, how it can lead to great things in life. I know Teddy may have lost some fans after his little incident with Marc Goddard, I believe his name is, on the recent top-ranked boxing program this month. But I know Teddy's heart and passion for the sport of boxing. I got to talk to Teddy this year, and He's an amazing individual. His stories will keep you entertained and in awe for hours. And if there's one thing he's more passionate about than boxing, it's his foundation, which he named in honor of one of his greatest influences, his late father, Dr. Theodore Atlas. So please go check out the article I did on him. It can be found in the wrestling, boxing, and MMA section of Cheap Seat Sports. Again, the official address link, cheapseatsportsite.wordpress.com. And that's going to do it for this edition of Combat Mania. So go follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope at Combat Mania UD. Go follow the other podcast I'm a part of, along with Nick Federa, called The Unspoken Podcast, on Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope at the UDUP. If you want to hear me talk about sports like baseball and football, that's the podcast for you. The Unspoken Podcast, which is also part of the Undetermined Podcast Network. And you can follow the official Undetermined Podcast Network account on Facebook and Twitter at the UD Network. So go like and follow all the rest of the Undetermined Podcast Network accounts. And that's going to do it. So, I'm Tom Albano, and this has been Combat Mania, a Cheap Seat Sports production, part of the Undetermined Podcast Network. We'll see you next time for episode 9. Until then, take care, everybody.